During an interview with Ari Malboro on MSNBC this week, Donald Trump's former lawyer/fixer Michael Cohen said that both Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump, Donald's favorite child, helped create fraudulent documents regarding the hush money payment to Stormy Daniels. One of the things, of course, that Michael Cohen got busted for. And Cohen claimed that not only did they help draft these documents, but that there is documentary evidence that they created the phony documents, meaning they have proof that they knew these documents were fake, they created them, sent them off into the world, whatever it is. Cohen says the evidence 100% exists. And that obviously could be very, very bad news for Ivanka and Jared. Here's the thing. We know right now with this investigation taking place in New York, they're kind of focusing on Trump Organization CFO Allen Weisselberg right now. We also now know that one of the main focuses for Weisselberg is whether or not he paid taxes properly on gifts that he received over the years from Donald Trump. That's little. Let's be honest. That's a little thing. That's not a big thing. That's not rampant organizational corruption. So why would the prosecutors be focusing so heavily on this one guy who wasn't even in charge and whether or not he paid taxes on some of the things that Trump gifted him over the years? Well, I'm no prosecutor, no lawyer here, but having worked around lawyers for almost 2 decades, you kind of start to get a feel for these things. And it would seem, in my personal estimation of this, that what they're trying to do is build a rock-solid small case against Allen Weisselberg so that they have something to dangle in front of him and say, listen, we can make this go away. This is no big deal, buddy. But in order to do that, you've got to give us this information. Michael Cohen is out there saying this information exists. Hell, Michael Cohen has also, by the way, met with these prosecutors. So if he knows that the evidence exists, he could tell them where it was, at least at one point, because he knew how it was done and all of those things, and of course, all of the names of the individuals involved. So with that information and potential charges looming for Weisselberg, prosecutors could easily try to work out some kind of deal to get Weisselberg to flip on everyone else in exchange for dropping those relatively minor charges against him. I think that could be what's happening. Again, I don't know. Obviously, I'm not working in that DA's office. I'm not at the New York Attorney General's office, so I don't know specifically what angle they're going for here. But I do know you don't impanel a grand jury just because a guy may or may not have paid some taxes on some gifts. That's not something that happens. You don't need a grand jury for that. Hell, you could use Judge Judy for that. They're going after something much bigger here. And Cohen, to his credit, as far as we can believe him, okay, let's be honest, the guy has a history of clearly lying to individuals, to Congress, and he admits it too. But, so, we gotta be a little skeptical about what he says, but he is coming out every now and then with the slow drip. Like, hey, what about this? Oh, hey, don't forget about this. I think he knows what he's doing here. And I think he's doing it intentionally and methodically to strike fear into the hearts of the Trump family, just mainly to get a rise out of them. But for us, that could be valuable information that tells us where these investigations are headed and who, like Jared and Ivanka, could be in serious trouble.